Welcome back to Boss Uncaged. So today I think is going to be a very fun and intuitive show. You're going to hear the keyword sexy over and over and over and over again. So just be alarmed. You're going to hear the word sexy, right? So the person I'm interviewing today, I like to, obviously his first name is Franco, but I'm going to deem him the mobile home boss for obvious reasons. So I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about you and how did you get into that business? The floor is yours.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, by the way. But yeah, the mobile home boss, that's a first for me. So I love it. But yeah, I have a business that's really catered around helping middle-class families and low-income families be able to attain home ownership. So we built that really around mobile homes. How I got into it, it really stems back to how I grew up. I came from an immigrant family over from the Philippines, moved over here. My dad was the only primary worker. There was a situation where they divorced. He left. I was put in this situation where I had a single mom. It was me and my younger sister, and we were just left to figure out how to survive. And it was such a dark, hard time for me. Every single month trying to gather money towards just to cover paying rent. Because I was out here in the Silicon Valley or San Jose where rent was so high, housing was so expensive. And I feel like we were good people. I feel like we were good, hardworking people. But why is it that it's so difficult for people like us to just get out of this rat race, right? And going through that experience, I was working real estate at the time, did that, ended up because I was in survival mode and really trying to hustle and grind. I really took upon to be a good agent, and I did door knocking, calling, that sort of thing for a while, and then became a good agent. But as I progressed, as I became older and more secure, I learned to kind of hate the real estate industry because it became an industry. It's an industry where you end up it's an industry where people try to help the richest people they can, try to get the most expensive homes that they can. And to me, it just wasn't me. I wanted to go back to my roots and find a way to be able to help people that were in my shoes. And really took upon trying to study why is it that housing's so difficult for the poor or for the middle class? Why is it that the rich are able to benefit from all these home ownership tools, and the people that are important in this world, like the teachers, the nurses, they have very limited opportunities? So tried stuff with the government, didn't like that route, and then came across mobile homes and realized that these are so misunderstood, and there's perfect opportunities for people to be able to get out of that rat race of renting and get ahead, and then now open new doors to be able to own homes. Fell in love with it and helped one family, got addicted to seeing how fulfilling that was, to seeing a family get out of renting and that sort of thing, and wanted to keep doing that over and over. Sorry if that was a long tangent, but I felt like it was important to kind of go about that because it's so, that's kind of how I got started into mobile homes. And now we develop, like you mentioned, the word sexy, right? So a lot of these old mobile homes, the way people see it, they think they're trailer trash. They think it's the ghetto or in some sort of way, because that's all they see in the media. But, a lot of these communities, what we're doing is turning a lot of these very old looking mobile homes into what we call now is sexy mobile homes. So we turn them to 1,500 square feet, beautiful. They look just like new construction, single family homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And that's where sexy mobile homes came about. So, yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, I think you're living up. I mean, we said sexy about at least 5 times so far. So keep in mind, we're going to keep hearing sexy on this particular episode. But I think you brought up a really solid point about like mobile homes. And I want the listener to really understand like mobile homes have been like a thing throughout history that has waves, right? I mean, if you go way back to like Oregon Trail, right? Like wagons, like those were the original mobile homes. And then it became more of like a Hollywood thing for like the stars and the glitz and glamour to be on set, and then it became kind of like the trailer park. But in today's world, I mean, to your point, you're solving a huge problem by trying to make accommodations that are sexy but also affordable. So I want you to kind of talk about that a little bit, like what sparked it in you to dive into mobile homes versus tiny homes or like campsites or anything else that could have been in this category. Why did you pick mobile homes?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. One is I wanted to find something that's very practical and very something that I could relate to, because a lot these tiny home stuff, it's very cool on TV and that sort of thing, but it doesn't actually work in a lot of these metro areas. Now, there's in a lot of these metro areas, there are a lot of mobile home parks that were built in the 70s that were there and never really improved in a way, like San Jose, San Diego, LA, Las Vegas as well, and Phoenix too. But basically, that's one big reason. And the other big reason as well is the whole ownership side of it. It's very misunderstood, but we're seeing families that are able to better survive in expensive areas. They're able to gain equity. Their mobile home is actually appreciating, not depreciating. And a lot of the great elements of and perks of owning single family homes, they're getting out of owning a mobile home park. They're getting out of owning a mobile home inside of a mobile home park, right? So the system's already there. It's just now the families are able to use it. And that allowed us to be able to grow at scale. So these old parks and with old homes that were built in the 70s, they were built there before it was very high density. So you'll see a lot of single wide homes in very dense areas, but they have actually a land space that can fit a 1,600 square foot home, right? They're already living there. They're already in a very desirable area. Now, how can they optimize that home to be bigger and to be able to gain value in the future? Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I think we're going to have a really good conversation because I've dove into mobile homes and I looked at the real estate, and I also looked at it from like the mobile environment of like, prime example, living in Georgia. In order for someone to actually become a mobile home real estate agent, they also have to have access to becoming like a licensed car dealer because of the wheels that's associated to mobile homes. And again, you live in California, so the rules and regulations in California are probably 10 times more difficult to kind of get into that market sector. So I want to talk about, like you brought up, the mobile parks. And I think most people don't realize, like, if mobile parks are $1 billion industry that's underneath the radar. I mean, you have selling of the mobile homes, you have buying of the mobile homes, you have mortgages, and then you have this magical thing called lot fees. So I want you to kind of talk about that a little bit, to kind of talk about like how are you adding value to that, and how are you monetizing both of these sides of the coins.
Yeah. So as far as adding value for like the residents, for example, so I want to kind of paint the picture. Now, these ratios that I'm going to give are always contextual to the area that you're in. So I'm in San Jose. Average rent for like a 2-bedroom home is like about $3,500 a month, right? Could be different in a different area. So a family's renting, a rent payment is about $3,500 a month. Now, if we shift, I'm going to use Hazel as an example. She was renting for about $3,300 a month before. She's a nurse, wants to grow a family, that sort of thing. Couldn't afford. In areas like here, you're either renting at $3,500 a month or you're buying something at $1.6 million, and there's nothing in between, right? And what I was really trying to build was that in between step to help catapult someone out of renting and now have a chance towards getting into regular real estate. So Hazel, for example, was renting at $3,300 a month. Now, when she moved just her housing payment from a full-on rental into owning a mobile home, her payment in total was about $3,500 a month, right? So yes, a lot of people can see the flaw that you are paying that lot rent, that space rent, but her lot rent was about 1,100 a month. And then her mortgage was more than 2/3 of that. So in the rental world, where she was paying 100% of her payment to the landlord, where she can't get anything back and no benefits back, right? Now switching to the mobile home element, yes, she's paying a third of that towards the landlord for rent, but 2/3 of that is to her benefit. She's paying down an asset that she owns that has a potential to appreciate, and she's able to get tax write-offs and a lot of the benefits, the same as like purchasing regular real estate. And now when she purchased, she was actually my first client. When she purchased that home 3 years ago, now her home is worth about 370,000. Oh, I'm sorry. She purchased that home for 300,000, and now it's appreciated so much. And now that mobile homes are becoming more known, now the value of her home is at 370,000.
Mm.
So she has an asset now that she's been paying for and that she's gained equity on. And guess what? Now she can sell that home and have a 6-digit down payment to be able to afford that 7-digit home, right? And it wasn't a career change. So many people are just 100% focused on their career, and that's good and all, but you got to understand where your payments are going to, so you can help open your chances of success. But she was at the same job, but because she changed her housing payment, that helped her be able to succeed and get out of that rat race, right? So we try to educate people of the difference of the two to be able to get ahead. And it helps so many families get ahead too. One perk I want to bring up too is that in these communities, because they're considered affordable housing, you're not competing with investors trying to buy these to rent them out. So it keeps the prices pretty low, and you're not competing with ultra rich, all these hedge funds that are buying real estate now for rentals, right? So it keeps a lot of the benefits for the working class.
Yeah, very, very cool. So, I mean, with that, I want to kind of dive into the segmentation of like moving a mobile home, right? Because I mean, you're saying if we buy it in California, let's say it's brand new, it may be a couple $100,000, but you and I both know like you could find mobile homes pretty much on Facebook Marketplace, and it could be like used, not necessarily brand new, not as sexy as you're developing them. But let's say you put $5,000, you move it to a new location, right? And then you put like another $20,000, $30,000 or $40,000 into it to renovate it. Now, protect like you're buying that property. So essentially you're talking about having an asset that's paid off in full. You could live in it for a little period of time and then start renting it to get that capital to start paying on other homes or buying other properties. Have you dove into that space as of yet?
A little bit. I will say that a lot of our business model is based around homes that aren't movable. They are classified mobile homes, but to be honest, we build them to be as permanent as possible. So the actual value is a mix between what they have as a lease agreement with the park ownership, and then also the home we build it planning on it never being moved. So these are very high quality homes that actually take a heavy amount of work to be able to move it. But the idea is you can sell it for more than what you spent on it later down the line, right? So like, just like in real estate, like a $1.6 million home here in San Jose, in Washington or another outside area could be 300,000, right? So the same with mobile homes, right? So a $300,000 mobile home in San Jose could be like $120,000 in another area as well. But it's all trying to understand things in steps and stages to be able to get out, optimize your personal cash flow so that whatever you're spending on housing will work towards you.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you're a listener and this is the first time you've really, I mean, obviously you've drove by mobile homes, you probably drove by mobile parks, but you really didn't understand why they're still in existence. Like we're really talking about the meat and potatoes, about like how money is being made behind the scenes. And I think that to your credit, you've jumped into a space that's highly underrated, but highly lucrative. I mean, think about it. I mean, in every state, there's multiple different mobile parks and mobile homes collectively based upon neighborhoods, based upon parks, based upon just owning land. So I want you to kind of talk about that to a certain extent, because you're taking a mobile home in a mobile park and then you're rebuilding it based upon the lot size. So someone may have a single wide, but their lot may support a double wide. So you're upgrading them. So I want you to talk about that process a little bit.
Yeah, so we have different customer bases. We do a lot retail to direct to the consumer, but like you mentioned, we work with park owners too. So like, let's say somebody has an older mobile home park, they own that. How can we convert a lot of those older single wides to be able to, incentivize everybody? Being an entrepreneur, I'm fortunate to be around a lot of people in startups in this area and business in this area, and I've always believed in providing value to all parties, right? So to the consumer, to the park owner, to the management, and then to us as a company as well, right? So with that being said, how can we find a win-win solution for these residents to be able to up their value of their specific home itself, while the park owners are also able to up their value because they're able to have nicer homes in the community. They're able to up the cleanliness of the how the park looks and the aesthetics of that as well. And you have a lot of tenants that take care of their property because they have a lot of investment in their own homes, right? So how the process works for us really is we partner with these park owners to kind of deploy our consulting into their company, and we build them a model that will allow them to slowly be able to convert a lot of their old units into retrofitting bigger units into their communities, and basically raising the value for the residents, and then also raising the value of the mobile home parks itself.
So if I'm a listener, I want to break down what you just said because it's so smart, right? I mean, obviously you have a dual demographic, right? You have the person that's looking for affordable housing, right? And it doesn't mean that they're broke. It means that they're not multimillionaires, but they're obviously well off or middle class, and they're looking for opportunities to move into a house. But you're also secondary market sector is the managers or the owners of the mobile parks. Because to your point, you're going in, and most people that don't understand about mobile park homeowners, as far as the owner of the park, they usually don't like to do anything with the mobile homes. Like they like to get the lot fees and let the homeowners do all the work. So you're coming in and making it sexy, right? Again, that keyword, you're rebuilding it, you're remodeling it, and you're establishing that their park is more higher echelon. So you have two demographics. I would say on a scale, which one do you kind of sell to or market to most?
That's a good question. I'd say both. I think, it's interesting marketing wise. I hate sales. I'm a person of how do I say this? I love educating, right? And I feel like if I put out enough educational content out there, people will understand. We don't ever push anyone to buy or to sell or anything. I find if you build something that is of value and a need, then people will come to you. And that's how I see my business, is that there aren't a lot of people that understand how to build value of mobile home parks. There aren't a lot of people that understand how to build value of a personal mobile home itself. And, when it came upon starting the business, I understood that profile. I understood the competition. I understood that it's something that will be a need and will always be a need. What's interesting is we don't do much marketing outside of just showing off how our homes look, showcasing what we do, but we market to both pretty equivalently. When there's park owners, we'll service them. When there's residents, we'll service them as well. And we service them with the same amount of customer service and care, right? So
Nice. I think I baited you into that keyword of marketing, which brings me to like a next topic, which is kind of like your Franco TV version of yourself. Because obviously, I think that you have, like most people that stand in front of a camera, you have multiple personalities. So one of my favorite videos that I've seen from you, and I think you may know where I'm going with this, is the Michael Jackson Thriller of mobile home. I don't know when you shot that thing, but the thing is, if you have not seen it, you need to go online. You need to search for Franco, his TV channel, and look up for Thriller, right? His remake of Thriller Mobile Homes. It is completely hilarious. But to your point, you're not talking to any particular demographic. You're talking to a collective age group when you're remaking Thriller, but the keyword in Thriller is mobile home, which if you're singing, it's completely hilarious if you have not seen it as of yet.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, that was a good one. That was an embarrassing one, but I don't know. I think it goes a lot to like who I am as a person. I'm a very funny person. Like, how can we, it's interesting. And I love that you feature a lot of business owners, but I feel like sometimes people feel like if you have a business, you always have to look professional
Mhm,
and speak a certain way and that sort of thing. Whereas for me, I don't mind looking silly on camera,
mhm.
wearing there was a Christmas one we did where I wore a Christmas dress on there just to be funny and that sort of thing too. But, you know, it all comes about, how do I say this? How do you put yourself out there so that people see you as a real person, right? And people will, I guess it all kind of happened. I don't know. I don't know why I came about that, but I just always love making people smile. I always love making people laugh. And I think that to me is of value, and it brings a lot of value in marketing too, right?
Yeah.
And it puts our name out there. It helps people understand what we do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, obviously the proof is in the pudding, and you're not, I'm not the only person that's recognizing it. I mean, I think last year you guys were named #1 in North Carolina, no, North Cali and Hawaii, right? As far
Yes.
as the sellers. So let's talk about that. Like, what has that done for your business being named? Obviously, California and Hawaii are those states when it comes to real estate. That's prime damn real estate. So I want you to talk about how did that make you feel?
Oh, it felt amazing. It goes, it really makes me feel great is I still to this day, with the agents that we have on our team, I tear up when we see a family that felt like they were never able to afford,
Mhm,
um, never, they feel there's a lot of people out here that feel like they're never going to be able to own a home. And when you see a great caring family, whether it's an immigrant family or a teacher, finally get their first big asset that they can own in an area like this, that to me has always been my drive. Seeing that, it's still to this day when I go at a closing with one of my agents, I still tear up. Now, I've a few years back, I was like, man, I love this so much. Now, how can I do this at scale, right? I can't do this by myself. Now, how do I teach our team and our members of our company to be able to do what I do and build value for more and more people? And then, the thing with our business is we have to do it at volume for it to make sense. So getting those awards for volume and units and that sort of thing, it gives me goosebumps because I know that these aren't just real estate investors getting their next rental and that sort of thing. Every single sale we do is creating an impact, a long-term economic impact for a caring low-income family that deserves the right to own a home. And that to me, oh man, gives me so much energy and makes me just want to grow more, right? I'm almost tearing up right now. So, but yeah.
I mean, I think you're tearing up for good reason. I mean, obviously earlier on you alluded to like a little bit of your backstory. So let's just dive into that some more to unpack it so they could understand like not only the value add, but the emotional aspect of what you're delivering to your consumer, right? You came to America when you was like roughly 11 years old from the Philippines, right? You
Yeah.
grew up in America, your dad was the breadwinner, and then, whatever happened, your dad left your life, and then you had to be kind of not forced, but by default, stepping up into that role. So ideally, you're giving back to a community of individuals because you've been in their shoes before. I want you to talk about that because again, there's entrepreneurs listening to this that only think about money, but ideally, you're not only thinking about money. You're thinking about also doing as equally good as making the revenue equal to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point. And there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, one is the a lot of people think that compensation is all just money, but to me, the biggest payback that I feel I get is the fulfillment I get for changing people's lives, right? That's one thing. And the other thing, going back to talking to those entrepreneurs out there, is like going through these hard times, even though it was the darkest years of my life, I feel like that built my drive, that built my pain. And a lot of people always ask me, like, what would I change about myself, if I were to go back a few years? And the truth of it is, I wouldn't change a thing because I know that when I was younger, or if that pain point didn't happen to me, I wouldn't be as driven as I am or as passionate as I am now to be able to help people that were in my shoes. It's that pain that I went through that I feel like I have to work hard to find out how to help a family that is currently going through that pain that I was going through, right? And how do I help people that were in my shoes and make their life just a little bit easier, educate them a little more, right? Help them understand, help them learn what I wish I was able to learn back then,
Mm,
right? And, the truth of it is, when I made that switch, economically and financially, it wasn't the right decision. I mean, with mobile homes, there's so much less that I make actually compared to single family home commissions. I could have gone that route, but I was so passionate about making this work because unfortunately, there's a lot of agents out there, like I said, chasing to help the rich. And what's ending up happening is that these lower income families that can barely afford real estate, they're getting ignored. They're not getting serviced correctly. And time over time, are people coming to us so grateful, just saying like, man, thanks for spending the time with me. I've spoken to so many agents. They kind of just left me alone, right? And these people, just like in my shoes, deserve to be served as well. They deserve the right to be given the right advice. They deserve people's time. And for me, I can't stand people that ignore these people because they don't qualify
mm,
for a home. And if it takes creating systems, if it takes me working long hours and doing volume for it to make sense for us to help these people, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to wake up early, work late nights to make sure that happens, because I know the direct impact that we're making,
mm,
right?
mhm.
So sorry if I lost track of the question, but
No, I think you definitely nailed it. I mean, so with that, I mean, obviously you're saying positive out, positive in, but we both know even in business, when you're highly positive, highly motivational, and obviously you're intellectual as well, so you're delivering value, you always come across someone that's going to be a negative Nancy. You always come across someone that no matter how good or how positive your situation or your staff is, they'll always find the negative. So I want you to talk about, without naming names, right?
uh,
Example of someone that you had to kind of overcome that with. I mean, a client that you dealt with that was kind of like nothing was never right, nothing was never good enough for them. And how did you help them to kind of see the value in what you're delivering and convert them into becoming a more positive person?
that's a good question. Um, huh, that's a tough one. I guess, you know, it all kind of comes down to conviction, right? If you had a friend that you feel like what your what your product is a solution to their problem, how much conviction do you have to helping that friend be able to be able to do X so that their life could be better, right? Um, I'm a person that no matter how angry they are or how unhappy they are, I'm I'm never going to push someone to make a decision, but I always
Mm,
craft the way that I can explain better, the way that I can teach better, to be able, because I'm so convicted in the fact that I know that if you switch from renting to this, that 5 years down the line, you're going to be so much better off, right? And it's so much of a, how do I say this? A no-brainer that you are better off, because like rent is basically a lot of it in most cases, you don't really get any payback. It's
mm,
difficult to do that unless you have alternative investments and that sort of thing. But because I'm so convicted and I know that we're helping so many people get ahead, I explain away as much as I can, and I create content away to show exact examples of so many different cases of people getting ahead financially. And I guess to answer that question is, because I'm so convicted, I know I'm willing to take the time and patience with people, no matter if they are upset or anything like that too.
mm. I think it's definitely, I mean, just hearing you and hearing your story, I knew it was going to be a hard question because, again, like you're coming so positive to the table, positive and positive it out. But, obviously sooner or later you may come across someone that's kind of like may put some spoil in the soil, right? So
Mhm.
like talking about like business, and again, I think when you're talking about mobile homes, it's a unique business structure because it's associated to real estate. Some states it's associated to real estate, but it's also associated to car brokers. And then you're also talking about like land. So, like, what is the requirement? Obviously, you're a real estate agent, but what are there any additional requirements to get into that field?
You're right about the dealership side, the car side. So how do I say this? It's going to be different in every state, and I feel like it's a lot of different puzzle pieces that are involved. And I think any form of entrepreneurship, it really is just a puzzle,
Mm,
right? The elements of real estate, what are the factors that we like and what we don't like? The elements of startup and construction, what are the elements that we like and don't like, and development. And then also, it's also kind of a rental portfolio as well. How do you have to understand why these park owners want these parks too. And it's all a puzzle of trying to build value
mm,
together. So building a business is building value and solutions for multiple parties at the same time. Now, I could get into so many different licenses and things like that, but I don't feel it's going to be contextual because every
mm,
state's going to be a little different. But the key thing is understanding the demand of housing in a particular area and
mm,
understanding the competition, which technically means like what are people paying for rent and what is their option to be able to purchase a house.
mhm,
Are there a lot of people that are paying high rents, and is it very difficult for them to own a house, right? If that's the demographic of your area, then you should really consider mobile homes because there's a lot of false myths, a lot of false education around mobile homes. And in a lot of these areas where it's unknown, these are places where you can really extract value and you can really be able to get ahead out of, compared to other people.
mm.
Um,
It's definitely very, very interesting. So, like, let's just unpack that a little bit and just change the structure of that question, right? So,
sure.
let's say outside of the licenses, how is your business structured? And now, obviously, we're in the U.S., so we're talking about LLCs, S corps, and C corps. Are you governed underneath any of those protections, or are you governed as more of a real estate agent underneath a broker?
So we have a real estate side. I don't really consider ourselves like a real estate agency,
Mhm,
but we do have the real estate side mainly because we don't just convert old homes to new ones, but we also help people sell their current homes, and we also help people purchase um, used homes as well. So we try to be an end-to-end business,
mhm,
anything around mobile home. So we're a construction company, we're a development company, and then we're an agency as well. So it's all of those combined, as well as getting into the lending to be able to support these purchasers and stuff like that, right? So yes, we have an S corp, we have LLCs, and every department kind of has its own business structure.
mhm,
But as you grow a business, I'm trying to design my answer towards your viewers, but as you build a business, you understand what's the most important value at first, and then what's the ancillary businesses that
mhm,
complement your business, right? So at first it was building these homes. Next, complementing our business is the real estate agent side of it, right? This is servicing these directly. And then there's more on the construction element that we have to help. And now
mhm.
we're getting into the lending side to help create more lending opportunities for people that will loan for people trying to get into this uh, mobile home ownership, right?
Nice.
So those understanding that, and it's the same how any big businesses do it as well, right? Coca-Cola, for example, let's say didn't always own bottling or can companies, but now that they realize they did, then later down the line they will, right? So I feel like that's important to understand. And I get a lot of what, keep in mind, I didn't go to college or anything, but because I wanted to figure it out, I study a lot about how businesses grow, how they bring value, how do we model similar things that successful companies do to be able to maybe gain some of those benefits as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a hell of a segue to kind of talk about your book, because you actually published a book as well too. And I think one of the chapters in the book was what was the name of it? It was How It All Comes Together. I think that was like
Mhm.
chapter 5 or 6 or something along the lines. So I want you to kind of talk about like going into publication, and what you're talking about is you're describing how all these different components come together. And most people, they only think about, oh, I have an LLC. But what you're clearly stating is business being structured based upon ownership on that particular thing that business does well. So a real estate arm would probably be an S corp, right? A construction company owning the actual hardware would probably be a C corp. And then obviously, you're talking about leasing or financing could obviously be then another LLC. So again, you have ownership between these different models to do the different protection, but at the same time, how are all these components coming together?
Got it. So the just for so the question is, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding that question.
So the question, based upon the chapter of how things come together, I want
Gotcha.
to understand, like, I want you to talk about the book, talk about that chapter
Yeah.
in it, and how all these different components, because again, most people think about, I have an LLC and I'm good. I have an S
Uh-huh.
corp and I'm good. But you're bringing together multiple different facets. How is all that working for you, and how is that all that come together in regards to your book?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, as far as the book goes, and thanks for bringing that up, is it's really along the lines of breaking those stigmas and myths around mobile homes, and then also sharing a lot of the benefits of why it works and why it's a really big thing that needs to be broadcasted,
Yeah.
because we aren't really taught a lot of these in school. We're not. When I was growing up as middle class or low income family, we weren't taught the importance and values of owning and how real estate can make such a big difference.
Mhm.
I think they're two separate questions. I can't really speak too much on how LLCs and S corps work. I'll be honest. That's one thing that I'm not too good at understanding, and legal protections for that. But that's where I hire someone that's an expert to understand, hey, where are my value, how do I protect myself tax wise, how do we protect ourselves in separation, and that sort of thing. But as far as like the book and how it all comes together, it really comes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, is how do we provide value to low income families and provide more education to help benefit those families that just want to get ahead. But in the end, it comes down to that, is providing value for those that really deserve it. And all of these businesses that we're building, it's really built on purpose and built on not not so much built on income. It's built on purpose and how can we create a difference?
Mhm.
How can we make a difference? And all of these elements of any business all tie in together, like we spoke about the puzzle part, and have to be connected in some sort of way to be able to be sustainable. It has to be able to make money, but also make a difference at the same time. I am in this area. We have a lot of startup companies that really you can learn from and understand. And how do I say this? I learn everything I learn off of YouTube. But it's all about being resourceful. Like those things that I don't know about taxes, I immediately can go in a deep wormhole for hours on YouTube of how do we understand that, right? And then as I was in those growing pains of business, any element, whether it was sales, whether it's process improvement, I take it upon myself to study that online. You don't need to go through college. You don't have to go through formal education to learn anything. Everything is now online,
Mhm.
right? Um, but putting all of these big puzzle pieces together is so, so important. And for any entrepreneur out there that feels like they're going to make a difference, the more you learn about, the more you see. That's why I love your podcast, is because you're featuring people making a difference, and it helps bring energy to other people that might be in the shoes of wanting to make a change and make an impact, but don't have friends around them that
Mhm.
that they can look up to be able to do that. But you providing this podcast, you're bringing a value to people to see that it is possible for me to make a change. You know, if Franco came from nothing and with a single mom and was so passionate about this and been able to build something, then maybe I have a chance, right? And one of the questions I love that you ask is, there's a book that I love that it's called 10X with Grant Cardone, you know, where he was at his dark moments, and how was he able to build something impactful, right? And that's really what made me feel it was an opportunity to grow, by listening to him, by reading other people that came from nothing. And it's hard to believe it, but if you believe it, that you can do it, then you have the energy and capacity to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a hell of a segue. I mean, bringing up the 10X, and I mean, those that know Grant knows that he's associated to real estate. So I'm going to ask you that question now. Like, if I'm a listener and I'm listening to this, and you're talking about real estate, you're talking about mobile homes, you just talk about business in general, what books helped you on your journey to get you to where you are that you would like to recommend to the listener?
I'd say I think books are very contextual to where you are at your current stage of business, and it has to be a book that really relates to you. 10X is one for me, because hearing Grant's story about how, you know, he was a drug addict, had nothing, and how he was able to come out of that, that was very contextual to my story when I was going through that. And then another book that I feel like is at the next stage after that is the 80-20 rule. One of my best friends recommended this book to me, and I feel like as an entrepreneur, especially a starting entrepreneur, you want to do everything. You have 30 different things you want to do. I need to make a website. I can go deep into learning how to do a website, this. But 80-20 rule is really to understand how to prioritize your tasks, how to prioritize your time. That is something that if I didn't learn that, I wouldn't be as impactful as I am today. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Because how do you understand what are the top 20 tasks that I'm doing that's actually moving the needle versus what's actually a distraction and maybe I should just put off for now or delegate for someone to do later, right? Because in a business, you feel like every little thing is important. But how do you prioritize what is the actual most important thing for the now, right?
So, I mean, rolling into the priority, right? And again, you come from, I would say, a close-knit family. How do you currently then manage your day-to-day business, which is could be extremely taxing at times, and with your family life?
Um, I'll say that starting the business during that time, I was doing nothing but working for a long time.
Mm,
You know, maybe I wasn't close with my sister as much as I wanted to be, and that sort of thing. But nowadays, being as busy as I am, I feel like I'm always consistently working, but I think I see spending more high value time with my sister and my mom in short breaks. So I could be working for a month and a half dead on straight, but hey, let's take a trip together as a family to
mm,
be very close and that sort of thing. And I think with family too comes friends as well as surrounding, you know, I have friends that I love as family and love me for who I am, no matter how crazy I am and no matter what I'm going through, the good and the bad. And I think that's a very valuable thing, because if you have people that care about you, whether you're gone for a month or not, and you can dive back in, and that's something that's so important to me, is having friends that I can enjoy life with and that sort of thing. So having those moments of escape and having friends that actually care about you and you care the same back to them too.
I think that's a hell of a point, and it brings me to another question that, just by what you said, I'm thinking about it. Every entrepreneur goes through this, right? I mean, obviously you have the friends that you can be detached from for like 6 months, 3 months, and then when you get back together, it's like nothing ever changed. But on the other side of the coin, there's the friends that could never comprehend what you're doing, why you're doing it. And so, like, how do you deal with that? I mean, obviously you may have a friend from high school that you guys are still associated, but in reality, when you're in the same space at the same time, you feel that distance because they cannot comprehend what you're doing for a living versus they're working for the man?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, I think as we mature in age, I think when I was young, I used to have a lot of surface level friends. And, you know, I feel like having so many friends is a great thing. And then as time goes by, I think in the last year or so, I've made a decision to really have a lot of only quality people,
Mhm,
you know, people that I know have the similar values as me, and I know aren't, because when you're an entrepreneur, your energy is a currency, right? You don't want to be around people that are always gossiping or always finding problems and that sort of thing. I want to, you know, if I'm going to spend time away from work and building value for people, I want to be able to enjoy life and be grateful for life. And I want to surround myself with people that enjoy life and appreciate life as well. Which kind of goes back to why I love visiting the Philippines. It's like here in America, it's totally a different culture. You know, you have people that have a roof over their head, they have this government support, and but there's so many people that are depressed and stressed, and you
mhm,
see suicides and that sort of thing. Now in the Philippines, you go there and there's so many happy people. They're like the happiest people you can meet, so grateful. And you go back to their home and they're living in a shed, like a tin shack with
mhm,
nothing, you know, they're making like very little a day. But why is it that they're so happy and appreciative and enjoy life, right? And it comes down to perspective, right? You know, money isn't everything, and you have to understand what's important to you, because we always see people that have gone through maybe grown financially and then commit suicide because they didn't feel fulfilled, right? And I think that's another thing to talk about too. um but you know, with that, I have my values as far as people wise, and because I feel like my business is making a difference, I'm very passionate and I push my energy towards that too.
hmm. So let's just say you're talking to your avatar, right? And earlier on, we talked that essentially you have two avatars, right? You have the middle class working individual, and you have also the owners of the parks. But I think there's a third value add as far as entrepreneurs listening to you right now. So if you're talking to any one of these three different people, what words of wisdom would you like to leave them with going from this podcast?
That's a deep one, man.
Mm,
the I'd say find, it's cliche, but find a purpose and find where you can make an impact.
mm,
Understand value and where you can make an impact. I think that's something that's very underrated. Don't always chase the dollar, you know, it's easy to look at social media and try to be materialistic, and that is your definition of success. But look at something that you're passionate about. If it's a business, is it something that you feel like you would do if it didn't have money involved or any financial benefit involved? Because in the end, it's going to be something that you're going to be spending most of your life on.
mhm,
And if you're going to spend most of your life on it, it better be something that you enjoy and something that you feel you can help others with.
mm.
And with that, it helps me be more driven to learn, be more driven to work harder, be more driven to succeed. Right. And I think energy is something that's not talked about a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. So we're on a bandwagon of energy, right? And you're leaving them with a hell of a profound words of insight. If someone's listening, how do they get in contact with you? Where would you like them to reach out to you?
Ah, a lot of our stuff, all of our links are on www.franco.tv.
Mm,
That's kind of like it has our food channel. I love making videos on that just for fun.
mm,
It has our mobile home stuff, our sexy mobile home stuff.
mm.
And yeah, you can reach us anywhere through that.
Very cool. And I'm happy you brought up the food thing. I mean, I just think like anyone that essentially travels or experiences different cultures or from a different culture, by default, the nature of them, you become a foodie. So I want you to kind of talk because I know you're an avid foodie. I've seen some of your videos and you're hopping around
Oh
between
yeah.
restaurants and you're trying different cuisines. So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Uh so before I did the mobile home stuff, I've always loved video. I love small businesses.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that entry level where I learned how to try to provide value without, it's a big hobby of mine to support small businesses. So I wanted to build something that would promote good food and good businesses. And I just created a channel that really featured restaurants, because I could go into a wormhole of this too, but I feel like sometimes, especially with COVID happening and that sort of thing, we don't socialize or go out as much as we should.
Mm,
And creations, innovation, entrepreneurship, and ideas in general come a lot from going out and different experiences and meeting people and connecting with people. And I feel I wanted to build a channel that gave people a reason to go out, gave people a reason to go to these events. And with that, I feel, to me at that time, makes a good impact
mm,
as well. So, that's the energy side of it. Of course, I love food. And I never, that's something that I never took money from, except free food, but which is a big perk. But yeah, I mean, yeah, traveling is good food, and you meet people through food, and
mm.
you get ideas and experiences through food too, and you experience different cultures through food. Food is it's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of giving a segue to the reasons why I created a food group and started a food podcast. It's for the same reasons why you're talking about. So, I mean, obviously, I think we definitely share that same accord. So going into like I always say, this is like my signature bonus question, and I think for you, it's kind of like there's so much diversity in you. I have no idea which direction you're going to take this, but if you could spend 24 hours with anyone, and that person could be someone that's dead or alive, right? And you're uninterrupted for those 24 hours, who would it be and why?
There's a few, but I'd say um, it's a mix between Steve Jobs and Kobe Bryant.
Mm,
Uh, Steve Jobs, I feel like is is a whole different thinker, and I would totally bug him on how he got his perspective
mm,
and how he was able to build value. And then Kobe Bryant, I'd say I'd love to pick his brain on how he was able to work so hard, how he was so driven. Even there's some people say I'm very driven. I want to be able to do more,
mm.
and I want to be able to work harder. But those are both big idols of mine that I feel were able to create good impact into the world.
Yep, and I think both of them did it in a short period of time as well too. When you think about the human lifespan living past 80, and both of them essentially died well before that, it's just kind of like, and they made such a huge impact on culture. And till this day, Apple is such a profound corporation. It's to your point. I think Steve Jobs and Kobe are two hell great choices.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not a Laker fan, so
Well, you live out in Cali, so
but I'm a Golden State Warriors fan.
okay, okay, makes point. 3 pointers all day. It makes sense. So going into closing, man, I definitely appreciate having you on the show today. I mean, it's one of those episodes that I think we could probably talk for like another 2, 3 hours and be like a Joe Rogan episode, right? So
Exactly.
I like to give whoever I'm interviewing opportunity to interview me. So the Boston Cage podcast is officially yours. You're the host of the show. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, my question kind of comes to really like what drives you, what makes you passionate about what you're doing,
Mhm.
and whether it's your podcast, your businesses, and that sort of thing. What is it that drives you?
For me, I think some of my listeners probably heard me say this probably a dozen times, but it's always going to be stemmed back into leaving a legacy with the breadcrumbs to support it. And I want
Mm,
to kind of unpack that. I mean, obviously, you could leave a legacy of business, money, and all those different things. But unfortunately, in my life, I almost had a life. I had a life death experience back in 2018 where I had a stroke and I almost died. And I
wow.
always look back at that moment. If I did die in that time sense, like what was I really leaving behind as far as the
Mm,
education, as far as the step by steps, as far as the birth of this podcast came after I had that life death experience, to where now you're documenting your story. I'm helping you tell that story, and it's going to become breadcrumbs for another generation.
I love that. That's so deep. And I feel people should really feel that as well. I mean, that's kind of one of the things Steve Jobs said was like, try to make a dent in the universe. Because the truth is like how I saw it too, similar to you, is that, you know, at some point we are going to die no matter what. And are we going to leave something behind? Have we had made a difference?
Mm.
Will I leave this world making a difference, a positive difference in the world? And I love that you live by that too. So
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. And I think it's unfortunate that, for most people, it's always a divide between being a good person, making money, and then what the legacy is. And it's trying to find the unity between all three of them. Like, you could be a good person,
Mhm.
make money, and leave behind a legacy all at the same time. So finding that synergy, and once you figure that out, I think that's when the real birth of whatever is going to come out of what you're building today will happen tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. You said that so perfectly well. And there are ways. I love that you said that, because it's not one or the other. You can be a good person, you can make money, you can build value, right? And I think people have that separation. Oh, if someone's making money, there must be some agenda behind it and that sort of thing, right? So, but yeah, there are ways to be able to build that value and create a positive impact. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you have any other questions for me, this will be the time. Otherwise, we're going to close it out, man. Any other questions?
no other questions, man. I think we did good, and you're right. We could talk for hours, but maybe another time.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate it, man. So I think that you gave a hell of a lot of insightful value to a market sector that's so underrated, even for current real estate agents that may not even think about that space. This episode is an opportunity for you to realize that every time you drive by one of these parks, there's opportunities waiting there. Seize the day.
Absolutely.
Yep. I appreciate you being on the show today, man.
Hey,
That's
well,
Grant.
thanks for having me, and I love what you're doing, man. It helps a lot of people.
I definitely appreciate that, Franco.